Look around any digital space today, and you will find an entire demographic of young men drifting in isolation. They are uncalibrated, struggling to navigate a social landscape defined by deep cynicism and complex unspoken rules. Society often writes them off as failures, but historically, this archetype is something else entirely: the pure fool. They are deeply sincere individuals, searching for straightforward, unironic truth in a world that thrives on ambiguity. When a person lacks the innate ability to decode layered irony or subtle social subtexts, the modern world feels overwhelmingly loud. To cope, they naturally gravitate toward highly legible, black and white narratives that provide a sense of order. This desire for clarity leaves them exposed. The internet offers a frictionless escape, serving up hyper-tailored digital superstimuli that short-circuit their craving for a coherent reality. When the real world offers nothing but conflicting signals and social static, retreating into screen addiction, a phenomenon known as hikikomorism, serves as a defense mechanism against an unbearable influx of noise. We look at the men trapped in this cycle and dismiss them as pathetic. We ignore the massive, industrialized digital structures specifically engineered to exploit their innate desire for an ordered world. The danger of leaving these men to navigate the wilderness alone is captured in the myth of Klingsor. He is the archetype of a man who fails to conquer his own base urges, falls into self-hatred, and then actively builds traps to corrupt others. Klingsor's mythical magic garden exists today as the algorithmic panopticon. It is a digital ecosystem designed to harvest the attention of lonely men, slowly convincing them to wear their deepest shame as a permanent identity. This diagram maps the stakes of this isolation. Contrast the Klingsor trap on the bottom with the upward path of the biblical archetype of Benjamin. He represents the vulnerable younger brother, a person holding immense latent value, entirely dependent on others to survive. Our current digital landscape operates on a ruthless default mechanism. If the modern Benjamin is left physically and socially isolated, gravity will eventually pull him down into Klingsor's trap. Digital addiction functions as an active pipeline, taking vulnerable men and mutating them into agents of the very culture that isolated them. Because these men lack the ability to decode the cynical subtext of the 21st century, they are uniquely shielded from the viral spread of postmodern apathy. This literalism allows them to act with a sincerity that others can no longer access. The ultimate blueprint for this potential is the mythic knight Parzival. His literal nature shielded him from the selfish, barbaric behaviors of his peers. But this same neurodivergent trait creates a paralyzing paradox. In the myth, Parzival becomes completely entranced, literally frozen in place, simply by looking at 3 drops of blood in the snow. When a hypersalient sensory input overwhelms the stranger's brain, they cannot be reasoned with. Applying standard social pressure only triggers fierce hostility. We see this same vulnerability in the biblical story of Joseph. He was a brilliant, uncalibrated stranger whose inability to read the room led directly to his alienation and exile by his own older brothers. World-altering potential remains stagnant if the individual possessing it stays locked in sensory isolation or is cast out by a society too impatient to understand them. A paralyzed stranger cannot activate themselves. They require the deliberate, seemingly irrational intervention of an integrated elder brother figure to break the deadlock. This requires a skill called mentadivergence. It is the learned ability of a socially calibrated person to intentionally empty themselves of their own assumptions and temporarily adopt the non-rational perspective of the neurodivergent mind. In the myth, the knight Gawain demonstrates this perfectly. Instead of fighting Parzival, Gawain approaches unarmed, recognizes the sensory trap holding him hostage, and gently covers the blood in the snow to break the spell. To understand the full weight of this intervention, we look to the biblical Judah. Mentadivergence must be paired with kenotic love, the act of self-emptying sacrifice. After years of carrying the guilt of betraying Joseph, Judah finally breaks his family's generational cycle of abandonment. When his youngest brother Benjamin is threatened, Judah steps forward and offers his own life in exchange for the boy's freedom. It is only upon witnessing this act of protective sacrifice by his elder brother that the exiled Joseph finally reveals his true identity, stepping into his power to save his entire family. A societal deadlock shatters when the strong voluntarily empty themselves of their pride, drop their weapons, and step into the reality of the weak. The historical blueprints prove the scale of what follows this intervention. A freed Parzival continues his quest and heals the wounded Fisher King, while a restored Joseph uses his organizational brilliance to save the known world from starvation. To achieve similar outcomes today, masculine spaces must be intentionally engineered to absorb social friction, tolerate difference, and protect vulnerability. This diagram illustrates a new standard, kenotic husbandry. It's a leadership model where an integrated man actively cultivates the capacity of those around him, rather than hoarding strength. When anchored by a protective brotherhood, their focus on truth stabilizes the group. Repairing the modern world begins when we stop mocking the stranger in the digital wilderness and accept the chivalric duty of being our brother's keeper.